Welcome everyone to this webinar. You're sitting in Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital that hosts the College of Health Sciences, Moi University, and the Moi University Clinical Research Center. I wish to say thank you very much to all of you who've been able to join us physically, and to the hundreds of people who have joined us virtually. Karibuni sana. We're going to hold a conversation around investigator trials, investigator trials, initiated trials, and our main speaker is going to be Dr. Charity Wambui, who will be joining us in a short while to give her talk, after which we'll have a panel of experts from the different fields in clinical research, and especially so in clinical trials, randomized clinical trials from around the country, Kenya, to hold the discussion with us. But before we move on, I'm going to invite Dr. Muthoni from the Clinical Research Society of Kenya to introduce herself and the society, after which we will hand over to Dr. Charity to give us the talk. Karibuni.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, colleagues, distinguished speakers, and our hosts at the Moi University Clinical Research Center. My name is Dr. Muthoni Kibuni, a medical officer and research fellow at Kavi Institute of Clinical Research, and the Community Engagement Workstream Lead for Clinical Research Society of Kenya. On behalf of the Clinical Research Society of Kenya, it is a profound honor to open this joint webinar. I want to specifically recognize our moderator, Dr. Charity Wambui, and our esteemed panel, Dr. Busakala, Dr. Kipiego, Dr. Okaka, Dr. Kerama, and Professor Were. Your presence today represents the full ecosystem of research, from the clinical trials and the regulatory halls of the pharmacy and poisons food to the global industry perspective. We are gathered here to discuss investigator-initiated research. While the global partnerships are vital, the soul of sustainable medical innovation lies in investigator-initiated work. Why? Because a local investigator sees the patient in Eldoret, Kericho, or Nairobi every day. You understand the specific nuances of our genetics, our environment, and our healthcare barriers. When we lead the questions, the answers we find are more likely to transform Kenyan lives. The Clinical Research Society of Kenya was formed precisely for this reason, to be the home for the African researcher. We are here to bridge the gap between brilliant ideas and successful execution. As we look ahead to World Clinical Trial Day in May, our goal is clear. We want to ensure that Kenya is a global hub of scientific excellence, with local investigators leading the way. Today, I challenge everyone on this webinar to listen not just for the how, but for the why. Observe the career paths of the experts and realize that the next breakthrough in oncology, infectious disease, or even maternal health will come from an investigator-initiated study right here in East Africa. Thank you, Moi University Clinical Research Center, for this partnership. I look forward to a robust and insightful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muthoni. We appreciate the call to listen and to action. Good evening, everyone, in person and online. My name is Dr. Wambui. I am an investigator at the Moi University Clinical Research Center. It is our honor today to be hosting this webinar. It is an exciting topic for us as investigators. And I think it comes in a time when the global landscape is shifting. We've all suffered in one way or the other, funding cuts, unpredictability of the funding environment. And I think this is a time like no other for us to take action. So welcome all to our site, welcome to our hospital, welcome to our university. We are a conglomerate of many institutions, and I'm going to be introducing our site just now. Let's upload the slide. All right. So with us today, we have a very rich panel who I'm going to be introducing briefly. And our panel today was selected because of their expertise in this particular area, and each of them comes from diverse fields where they have a lot of knowledge and insights to offer into this topic. And we are very grateful that all of you made the time and the journeys to be here. So if we can give our panel a clap even before I introduce them. Thank you very much. So today we are going to be talking about investigator-initiated studies in Kenya, and I think maybe I should have put there in Sub-Saharan Africa. And currently, let me start a bit by bragging about our site. We are the Moi University Clinical Research Center. This is our institution. We are in, I put us in between there because we really are a joint venture. What do I call it? I call it a very beautiful marriage where we part of Moi University as academia. We also part of Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, which is where we draw most of our participants from, and also the Ampath Center, which is where we do. We are under the Directorate of Research under Ampath, and that is where we also get our grants and program management. So sitting in between there is our institution, MUCRC. So we, sorry, I skipped a bit. So this is our team. We have it's not a large team, but it's an able team. We are a team of 9 investigators. We have 2 pharmacists. We have a site manager. We have a pool of study coordinators. We have regulatory officers, QA/QC officers, medical officers, and clinical officers. We also have data personnel, study nurses, phlebotomists, recruiters, and we also operate with our lab, which is the Ampath Reference Lab, with its constituent departments. So that is just our team. This is pretty recent photo of our entire team. I know we look few, but we're actually very many. We are a very able team. So for our site facilities, we have a lab. As I mentioned, we utilize the Ampath Reference Lab, which is a BSL2 lab with 8 dedicated labs within it. This is an ABLE lab, which is ISO accredited and also DAIDS approved. This is our DAIDS NIH lab. We also have a pharmacy, shout out to our pharmacy team, that is well equipped to handle investigational products. And we have 2 pharmacies because we actually have 2 sites. We have the site in Chandaria here, and we also have a site at the Daima Towers. So each of these, we have 2 pharmacies, 2 data centers here and in Daima Center. We also brag of Community Advisory Board. This is our link to the community. It constitutes of 6 members with diverse representation from the community. We also have their representation from the youth. We have representation from women issues. And this is how we as a site are linked to the community, and we are very proud of our CAB. We also have, I'm going to talk a bit about our patient population. I think our advantage here is that we are nested within a referral hospital, and also we are nested within an academic institution. So we have a diverse selection of patients and participants who can participate in our trials. And this is just a few of the areas I've highlighted. This list is in no way exhaustive, and I can confidently say that we actually have access to all, if not most, if not all, patient population. Right, so that was just briefly about our site. Now I'm just going to jump straight into the topic of today, and that is the investigator-initiated studies. So I'm not going to talk much on this because the panel is here and they're going to be giving us more insights on this. Mine is just a brief introduction on the topic. And so what are these investigator-initiated trials? These are trials where they are initiated and led by the investigator, as opposed to what we comes in with the protocol, and we are the implementers. The investigator is the sponsor, originator, investigator. He is everything in that trial. It is not primarily driven by industry. It's actually driven by the investigator. And the beauty about these trials is that they are driven by by need. So I do my rounds in the medical wards. I see a recurring problem and I ask myself, hey, how can we tackle this, or what is there that can be used to tackle this? And then I go ahead and design a research and look for funding. That is an investigator-initiated trials. And their strength is that they address this day-to-day, what we see day-to-day, what is ailing our people, what is of priority to us, because sometimes you appreciate we don't always, when you're consuming protocols, they don't always address what is a priority for us. So the beauty about investigator-initiated trials is that we get to address what we see on a day-to-day. And this is a very strong, this second one here, repurposing of licensed drug. This is a strength again of investigator-initiated trials. We have a drug that's being used for one thing, and we've seen it has efficacy in something else, and we can actually, as investigators, initiate a trial to test new uses for drugs that are already existing. And then here, I'm sorry, Dr. Okaka, there's less commercial conflict of interest. And we see this a lot, like even when you're doing journal club, and if at the end you see it is the trial is industry sponsored, people tend to frown, even if the methodology is robust and there was no conflict of interest. Somehow when you're the sponsor, and also like when the industry sponsor is also sponsoring the trial, people tend to think maybe it's not as robust as it should be. So these ones, the investigator-initiated trials, have less commercial conflict of interest. And then the key thing here is that they strengthen local research capacity. We are generating our own ideas, we are using our own researchers, our own biostatisticians, our own people to collect data, to manage the data. You know, it becomes a point of learning. It is a painful point of learning, but it's still a point of learning. And then these are studies that can inform policy and practice, because as I said before, they address problems that are local, that are unique to the investigators and where they operate. So what are the challenges? And I'm just mentioning a few here. Some more will come out from our discussion. Funding is the word on everyone's mouth, funding. And then the regulatory complexity, again, we say the investigator is also the sponsor, so they have to maneuver all those requirements from start to finish, including reporting of safety, ensuring that participant safety is maintained. It is not a small task. And then infrastructure gaps, which is infrastructure here, meaning is it human resource, is it the ability to do some of these things that constitute conducting an investigator-initiated trial. And then we have, for us in academia, some of us actually have very limited protected research time, because if you're to initiate a trial, it is time consuming, and that need, sometimes it can take up a lot, if not all of your time. And then planning and implementation challenges, I think I've already alluded to that. So what are the considerations here? And I'm happy we have today representation from our panel, people who've done a lot of IRB processes. We have regulatory, and then participant protection, which is key, and this falls squarely on the investigators as a sponsor, and then also maintaining data integrity and oversight, and again, making sure participant safety, which is key in our studies. But that doesn't mean it's all doom and gloom. We have a lot of opportunities. We have opportunities for partnerships, that is the private-public partnership. This is an opportunity for us to do capacity building, to align our ethics and regulatory approvals, and it's also a time for global collaborations, and also to put in there, and I appreciate we've seen a lot of this happening in the recent past, where a lot of our investigator-initiated trials are now coming with an implementation science component attached to it, because it's one thing to do the trial, it's another thing to test if it's actually applicable where we are investigating. So a lot of opportunities in there. So these are my takeaways. Investigator-initiated studies are critical. And they're critical for us because they are local and they offer local solutions. They build our capacity and they enable us to become more robust in terms of our science and how we practice the science that we generate. And then there are challenges, definitely, but these are not, they are addressable. It's nothing, there are no challenges that cannot be addressed. We just need to put our minds together and come up with these ideas. And collaboration, I think, is a cornerstone of how, if we are going to succeed in doing this. And there's a lot of focus now on South to South collaboration. And I think it's time, as Sub-Saharan Africa, we just woke up and, just leveraged what we have, the knowledge we have, the resources we have. And I think we are going to head somewhere. So it's time for us, and that is the end of my presentation. Right. So thank you. I think I want to shift focus now to the panel. Professor Gabriel Keegan. Yes. Professor Keegan is an associate professor of pharmacology and therapeutics at Moi University. He has extensive clinical research experience in clinical pharmacology, drug interaction, and therapeutics. And I have to say he has quite a number of investigator-initiated studies under his belt. Thank you, Professor Keegan, for joining us today. Next to him is Dr. Kerama. Dr. Kerama. Dr. Kerama, your name is said very many times in our science. You must get a lot of hiccups. You're very popular. So Dr. Kerama is a clinical pharmacist and a principal regulatory officer at the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. He holds a master's in clinical pharmacy, and he's also a master's in biotechnology, innovation. He has a lot of experience in regulation of medicine and health technologies, including GMP, marketing authorization, and bioequivalence. He's also a member of ABAREF Pilot Committee on Clinical Trials, and we are honored to have you here with us. Thank you. Next to him is Dr. Busahala. Dr. Busahala is the founder and director of hematology and oncology at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, where he served as director from 2005 to 2018. He's also a senior lecturer in pharmacology at Moi University, focusing on oncology, drug trials, and research. He's also a principal investigator. He also established an NCI-sponsored AIDS Malignancy Consortium clinical trial site in Sub-Saharan Africa. Congratulations, Daktari. And he also serves as a principal investigator for the Kenya-Nepal Oncology Network for Breast Cancer. Thank you, Dr. Busahala, for joining us tonight. He also has quite a number of investigator-initiated trials under his belt. Next to him is Dr. Sawe, all the way from Kericho. Dr. Sawe is, he leads the clinical research and HIV prevention care and treatment program in Kenya South Rift. He's an obstetrician gynecologist. He serves as a principal and associate investigator in multiple trials for the ACTG, Impact, HVTN, CoVPN, and oversees the PEPFAR HIV funded program serving 4 million people that's based in Kericho. We are honored that you came here, Dr. Sawe. Thank you very much. Next to him in a mask is the very infectious Professor Edwin Were. So Professor Were is a professor at the Moi University College of Health Sciences. He's a specialist in reproductive health with over 20 years experience in obstetrics and gynecology. He has a master's degree from Johns Hopkins, and he has led the maternal and child programs under AMPATH, and he also served as a principal investigator in the major HIV prevention trials, the Partners in Prevention study. He also met Bill Gates, by the way. And he has his research focuses on HIV, maternal and child health. And here also he has a lot of experience and capacity as one of the founding members of our and serving as the chair of our IRB here in MTRH. Thank you so much, Prof. Were, for joining us. Online we have Dr. Okaka. Dr. Okaka he works for Roche. He's our representation from industry. He's a medical affairs practitioner working in pharmaceutical medicine. He's a health finance and strategy consultant with consultant in private equity and hospital turnaround strategies. He's currently works as a medical partner with Roche Kenya and is their primary contact for investigator-initiated trials. So we are going to be picking on him quite a bit this evening. So thank you to our panelists, and I think I'm just going to go into the panel discussion. My call to the people online and people in person, if you have a question, please post it on the chat. The link, the YouTube link has a chat. Susan will be monitoring the chat for questions and comments. We value your input, and we ask that if you have any input, please don't be shy to put in there. We appreciate that not everybody could come, so we are happy to take all the comments people have to share. Thank you. So, my dear panelists, I ask you to please take the seats at the front. All right, I think we can jump right into it. And investigator-initiated trials. For the investigators in the team here, what is your experience? What motivated you to do your investigator-initiated study? Yes, Prof. Keegan, we can start with you. You're closest to me.
Yeah, thank you very much. We actually are in the same department, and we initiated a trial. He will talk about, because he was the PI, the concept, what made us do the trial. And then because we are publishing a paper which will be out soon on our experience for the investigator-initiated trial. But the only thing is that I just want to give an overview, not the specific trial. You'll touch on the specific trial. So when you're running an IIT in our settings, there are a lot of challenges, right from conception, because he will explain why we thought there was and like you said, is to address a problem. So there was a problem where the drugs we're using, was only responding to 30% of the patients, okay? At the oncology clinic. That is because we have both been involved in case studies, Kaposi sarcoma, and that is the BV, bleomycin vincristine combination. So it was like, what do you do with the other patients? Refractory patients who are not responding. So basically, without talking exactly, because he'll explain exactly the process, but let me just talk about how we did. There was a mixture of luck, and in most cases, it is leveraging on the existing facilities, like you rightly said. So first of all, the concept was very important, and everybody felt like there was need to have some other forms of treatment. And then, from literature, we were aware that there was a drug, gemcitabine, that people had said it might work for Kaposi sarcoma, AIDS case. And then, so it was like, let's try out. And then, of course, the procedure, there was a pilot trial on a few patients who already, they didn't have anything anyway. They were resistant, they had refractory case. And the results were good. And then, so the next thing was, now run the trial, but there is no funding. So it was, first of all, get the local, have everybody convinced within the group that this is a good idea. Because you have to convince yourself before you convince somebody else. And then the funding came. So now at least he had a lot of friends. We got some funding. And more importantly is we leveraged on the existing facilities at Ampath here. Like she said, we have a university here, we have the labs, we have the people working in several projects. And then luckily for that time, gemcitabine was around for the cancer of the head of pancreas, is it? Which there are not very many patients. And so we had the drug because that's another problem. Where do you get the ingredient? Because, we are used to, the pharma getting us a drug and then, well, their studies is mainly based on their, to benefit no, sorry. it's mainly, it helps everybody, it helps everybody. So here, at least now, so it was like you are saying, repurposing gemcitabine to now treat KS, which people had said it might work. So the next thing now is the usual, write up a protocol, which involves money, it involves a lot of people. So again, pooling, like you said, write up the SOPs, send it to to Kerama here to look at it, and then the rest just followed. It was very, we tried to have at least the people who are working on the other programs, maybe arrange payment through per diem, was it? Add them a little to help us so that we didn't really employ. And then every other procedure, you'll explain what I've not said, how we recruited the participants. Like for this one, we already had cases anyway, and it was not working. And then it went on like that until we reported. Oh, sorry. Thank you. You say the rest. Okay.
No, that's
Oh, I thought there was time.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Prof. Kigen. So, Dr. Busahala, you can pivot and tell us how you did that and what were some of the lessons and the challenges that you took from your experience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charity, and thank you very much, everybody who has joined us today. Picking up from where Prof. Kigen left, I think you have to emphasize the desire to solve an existing problem. You must have that desire. So it means you must be keen, you must keep your data, you must be looking around and being able to evaluate the outcomes of what you are doing every day. That's the only time you will then be able to identify the problem. If you cannot identify and define the problem, then it becomes difficult to even think about an investigator-initiated trial. So I think that is really the main issue, that we must all internalize this thing called operational research, where you are continuously evaluating everything that you are doing on a daily basis and asking yourself, is this effective? And then that way you're able to define a lot of problems. And once you define the problems, then you have to identify. Now think about the solutions. And the whole process, I would say, usually requires foresight. You have to have a vision of where you want to be at the end of it. So from what he's saying, the investigator-initiated trial that we conceived here, which involved repurposing use of gemcitabine for patients with Kaposi sarcoma, started out of the fact that those were the main patients we were seeing in the oncology clinic. What he forgot to tell you that he was the pharmacist, and yes, and I was the physician oncologist in the oncology clinic at that particular time. So my role was interacting with the patients, and his role was to look for drugs. So we would be meeting and discussing, and discussion is very important in investigator-initiated trials. And then we were lucky because our colleagues from the US were here. Prof. Mamlin had just got into these discussions with one of our main sponsors then to bring in gemcitabine for cancer of the head of pancreas, which was not very common. And by the way, whose response wasn't very impressive. But through journal clubs, we came across, this literature that shows that this gemcitabine, which had been donated for cancer of the pancreas, had actually activity in soft tissue sarcomas. So that is where, purpose meets theory. You must also be good at theory. You must read journals. It will not come if you don't understand the basics of what you are doing. So if your problem is a certain disease, you have to understand the biology of the disease, the behavior of the disease, the pathogenesis, and the possible therapeutic targets. And that is exactly what we did. And we were able to establish that actually gemcitabine, if it can have activity in soft tissue sarcomas, and Kaposi is a sarcoma, then it should be able to work in Kaposi sarcoma. So that was the main issue.
Okay.
And how did we start? We started it by playing it safe. We looked at patients who did not have any other option. And so we used it as a last option in those particular patients. And we saw very good response. We saw about 50% response. And so based on that, we determined that there was equipoise. Yes.
Thank
and so
you.
at that level
Yeah.
of equipoise is now when we move to the next level. Thank you, Charity.
Thank you. So I'm hearing recurring themes of funding, leveraging. Dr. Sawe, as an investigator, do you want to chime in to this discussion? What are the opportunities? What are some of the challenges you have experienced with IITs?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the big elephant in the room always is money.
Money.
Yeah, without money, there's very little you can do. And I agree with the previous two speakers. All of us have to start somewhere. All of us don't have a lot of money, but you take advantage of what is available for you. If you are within the setup of a clinical trial site, you can wrap around the facilities that are already available there, and you have an idea. And the idea, as Dr. Charity mentioned earlier, sometimes starts as you do your daily work, as you see patients, you figure out that this is a problem, you think about it, you read about it, you form the idea, and you socialize the idea. It's always good to socialize the idea with the people that are working with you, the people that have been doing research, and start developing. So for the investigator-initiated clinical trials that we've actually done at our station in Kericho, we are very lucky to have a very nice research facility. So that starts. So I guess sometimes it is also being at the right place at the right time. But you can always be creative, even if you are in the middle of nowhere. You can be creative. You should not let the glass ceiling be your limit. And one of those that we took advantage of, for example, is a 15-year, we've been doing it now for 15 years, HIV cohorts. We are following about 1,200 people, just to see over time what is the evolution of care and the outcome of patients, to look at different types of diseases. And one of the things we identified early was, for example, even though WHO says you need to set your viral load level at 1,000, that is good enough. If you are below 1,000, you are doing very well. We were actually able to demonstrate from the 15-year cohort that we've been following participants that anybody who is above 200 doesn't do very well. And you know that even Kenya have lowered their guidelines now that if you are somewhere between 200 and 1,000, you need to start talking to your healthcare provider, and they need to start doing the testing to find out what is going on with you. So that helped. One of the other things that we saw very early, for example, when we started HIV treatment, was patients who are fragmented. If you have TB and you have HIV, you have TB and you are HIV, you used to go and see the HIV doctor who prescribes these things and gives them to you, doesn't talk to the TB doctor, and then you go and queue in the TB clinic. The TB doctor gives you their medication. They are not talking with each other. There are drug interactions, even the date of appointment. Even if you're having problem, you have to make 2 queues. And we were among the very, very first one, even before WHO wrote their guidelines of integrating TB and HIV. We said, why don't we have one doctor that can treat both in the same clinic so that you don't have to queue twice? And we actually piloted. I don't know whether you people remember the TB clinic those days. they used to be given the oldest building in the corner of the hospital where nobody wants to go there. And you know, they was like, it was almost like a prison. You know, when you pass next to the TB clinic, you go very fast. And it is stuck somewhere at the corner. And it is just left to the people who are doing TB. I mean, the big doctors didn't even go there. You are just left on their own. So what we did, we wrapped around HIV money. That time there was a lot of HIV money at the beginning of PEPFAR when we were allowed to do renovations, and we used to make jokes. You know, if you wanted to renovate, you had to start with an old building. Then you can renovate a big one like Ampat. I'm sure like when they built Ampat, they started with a small building, then you do 10 floors and you call it renovation all the same. So you have to be creative in the process also. So we used HIV money as if we are improving HIV care for patients, but it's actually a TB clinic. It was a TB clinic. So we improved the services of TB clinic by wrapping it around HIV. So those are some of the creative ways that you can work, take advantage of what is present, take advantage of your colleagues that are with you, take advantage of the population that you have so that you can cut your costs.
Thank you, Dr. Sawe. That is a very nice point there. We can use what we have. I agree. And conceiving the idea is one thing, but eventually we have to get approvals. And we are lucky to have representation here. Prof. Were, tell us, what is your experience with this investigator-initiated research? Where have you seen the gaps and where can we come in as in regulators? How can you help the investigators to grow and do these things?
Thank you very much, moderator. And thank you, the audience and everyone watching from wherever. My bit is to talk about the resources that enable the ideas to come to fruition. And quite often we talk about money. But if the money is available, but the necessary infrastructure has not been put in place, then that money could still go to waste. And good concepts, good ideas could still remain unrealized or untested because of lack of infrastructure. And that is why it is important to think about the infrastructure in which research happens, or if you like, the ecosystem in which research happens. And the ecosystem for research, whether, you know, farmer supported or investigator initiated, includes several things. There have to be infrastructure to identify and, you know, recruit participants. So generally that happens around health institutions and sometimes in the community. The next important infrastructure is if you are going to do trials, you need the existence of laboratories, especially since a lot of the work that is done requires some laboratory, you know, workup or the other. And the level of the laboratory and the certification of the laboratory is also important in being able to achieve what you want to achieve. Thirdly, you need regulatory ecosystem that looks at and decides whether the research itself is scientifically robust and ethically appropriate. And that is where the national regulatory system that starts off with NACOSTI. I'm sure you know the abbreviation or the acronym. NACOSTI is National Commission for Science, Technology, and Innovation in Kenya, but there are similar organizations or similar structures elsewhere. So in Kenya, for example, NACOSTI sits in Nairobi and does have a bioethics committee that looks at certain types of researches. But by and large, the mandate of NACOSTI is donated or delegated to institutional review boards. And some of those include what we have here at MOI as what we used to call IREC, Institutional Research and Ethics Committee, but now they call them Institutional Scientific and Ethics Research Committee. And that renaming was not, random. It was to bring in one of the contested ideas in ethics approval, where investigators imagine that the function of IRB is just to look at the ethics aspect, but not the science. And the emphasis is that if the science is not good enough, then it is unethical ab initio. And that is why the change in the name. So in terms of investigator-initiated research or trials, the challenge is usually that once you have the ecosystem, you need to have a meeting of minds so that you create a situation where, as Dr. Buzahala said, there is a state of equipoise to justify why you need to do a trial. And that means that the clinician who is seeing the patient is unsure whether the product they want to test is better than what exists or just as good or worse. So there's a state of not knowing which is better. And that is usually the primary requirement in setting up a trial, in the sense that there has to be scientific equipoise. Nobody knows whether this thing works, and therefore we want to test it. So the challenges around that is getting communities of researchers to come together and have a meeting of minds that the patients that they see have this problem, and that the problem is untested and there's a state of equipoise, and therefore a justification for clinical trial. But that is just a starting point. Then you have to figure out putting together the protocol, and the protocol requires a broad assessment of the existing literature to actually further demonstrate that this is an untested area. Then you have to think about your research participant, and that is the major role of IRBs. IRBs exist to ensure that participant safety is optimal. And some of the things that we are interested in is, are you testing this? Are you inviting people into the trial because they are easy to find, or because they fit a set eligibility criteria? Because it is a question of justice as an ethics principle. So you have to set these things out quite clearly. But more than that, you have to then develop the adjunct document, including the study manual. You have to decide on SOPs and develop them. You have to have informed consent. And all these things must come together. And it's a lot of work conceptualizing and putting together a research protocol that would pass, because all these things are checked by the IRB. In Kenya, the first challenge in ethics approval is that there is a multiplicity of reviews. And the multiplicity comes from the fact that, one, you may want to test Kaposi's gemcitabine on Kaposi's patient. but you don't have enough numbers to give your study the power to be able to do this. And so you partner with another center and it becomes a multi-center trial. So when it does that, that center has its own IRB. Your original center has its IRB. And then later on, you want to pass it on to Kerama and others at the expert committee in Nakosti. And they all want to look at this. So this delay the process. It is costly and so on. Number two is that the IRBs that look at these things are voluntary sort of committees. Nobody pays them. And they are underfunded and overburdened. And so when you start pushing in, for example, the kinds of protocols that Dr. Busahala usually send us, they are like 200 pages of hard, boring science that somebody has to plow through. And sometimes there are more than 2 or 3 on your desk, and nobody's paying you for it. So you can imagine the level of motivation. And this plows into the turnaround time. There are issues around, so how do you deal with some of these? Those are just the initial problems that exist. There are other problems like the expectation that when you do an informed consent, it should be in the simplest language possible, not overload the participants so that they can understand it, and they may not have the bandwidth to go through 10 or 14 pages of informed consent, and yet you have to inform them adequately. So those are kind of paradoxes. The other important thing is emerging areas like genetic research, heavy data-based kind of research that requires specific expertise that may not exist in the ecosystem you're working. And so there are many things we can talk about, but I think with respect to the most challenging thing, which is the turnaround time, you can work with single IRB situations, but that again requires agreement within the national environment about how that can be done. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe so I don't hog all the time, I'll give it back to you and maybe seek clarification where needed.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you for those insights. Dr. Busahala, you've been cited for your protocols. I think I just want to let I saw you nodding vehemently when Prof was talking about some of those challenges. And this is a nice time for us to hear from your perspective as the regulator. What are some of the things you've seen that some have made you want to scream, or you've seen areas of improvement and opportunities?
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the Moi University CRC. I want to also appreciate those who have shown up and those who have tuned in. I also want to recognize the presence of my expert committee members, so I should behave myself. So Dr. Kosgei and Prof. Kigen. A very good discussion that we are having, and it's good to hear the perspective of the researchers and also the perspective of ethics and regulatory at the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. We stand in the gap between the researchers and the participants or the patients in some cases who are available or do not have a defender per se. And therefore, where we sit as a regulator, and in this case, Pharmacy and Poisons Board, our role is to ensure that there is scientific validity of the study and also protection of the participant. And one major thing that we consider as well is the data that will be generated from all this, for it to be able to inform policy and guidelines, as Charity indicated in the opening discussion. That data must be credible. And for data to be credible, there are a number of things that need to go in. from the time the data is generated, how it's recorded, up to the time it's analyzed and interpreted for use. I say that because one of the major issues, or one of the major aspects that we have seen over time, is when we have initiated trials that are by investigators. The discussion around funding is key, but one of the key aspects is how do we then ensure that the data that we collect is well stored, the data is well interpreted, and is secure for long-term use. One of the major challenges has been infrastructure for data handling. At the regulatory review of protocols, one of the things we consider is what is your statistical analysis plan and how do you intend to store the data. Not many of the investigator-initiated trials have access to infrastructure that is robust enough to ensure that the data is credible, the data is stored and is available for long-term use in a manner that can be likened to what we have in well-financed trials. So data integrity and aspects around data is one thing that we face quite a bit. The other is the requirement for a study to provide quality or information about the quality of the study product. If I jog our mind back to around COVID, I believe most of us had an encounter with COVID, and this is where we had a lot of investigator-initiated trials, especially to repurpose products. Some of the products that were to be studied for repurposing were not necessarily registered in country. And when we have a study involving a product that is not registered in the country, at the regulatory desk, we will ask you to provide the chemistry, manufacturing, and control data. And that has always been a difficult ask for initiated trials because the investigator is not the originator of the product, and therefore they can only get it either by liaison to the industry or abandon the study all the same. So those two form the major challenges that we have received over time. And maybe the last one is what we consider to be post-trial access. When a study is performed and the results are promising, it is only ethical and moral, for lack of a better term, for there to be an access to this product, at least for the persons that it will be beneficial to. And that clause has always been a challenge for investigator-initiated trials because this is an additional cost to them that is not always easy to plug in. I think in an overview, those are some of the few challenges. I would not want to belabor the point about turnaround times. I think that's a discussion we can continue to have. And the turnaround time, most of the cases is driven by the time taken by the investigator to obtain the data or the information that has been requested from the regulatory perspective. But we will be able to highlight, I believe, in the course of the discussion, what are some of the opportunities and what is the Pharmacy and Poisons Board putting in place to ensure that some of these challenges are eased or are overcome so that investigator-initiated trials find a place where they can be competitive and we can also have access to the data that will be important for use by the public.
Thank you, Dr. Kerama. We will come back to you with those promised opportunities. And Prof. Kigen, I think you sit in a unique position where you are both an investigator and you're also a member of the expert committee. So in your other role, what would you say is, what have you seen as the main challenge? Or what would you tell your fellow investigators? Like when you're seeing our protocols, are you thinking these investigators need more training, these investigators are lacking in this way, or what would you say?
I'm not sure whether I can confidently talk about some of them because some of the issues are challenging. I know everybody blames the experts for delaying.
Yes, we do.
but then, but then there are several issues. Sometimes you get, and I don't want to blame the RBs as well, but some.
You can blame them.
Yeah, because
They're here.
because sometimes you get like Krama said, there are a lot of missing data, and there's always a lot of pressure, and then you see, like we've all said, we want to protect the patient, we want to protect everybody. So it's an interplay of several factors. There is pharma in there, there is, but the key issue really that would, in most cases, delay is that you do not get all the documents, the statutory documents in place. That is usually a problem. And like we probably said, people require more maybe education now that we have online on how to raise these issues. And like you said, there would be like 2 or 3 of us who would be looking at it. And I think it's only fair. There have been attempts to try and move this fast. I know there is a lot of, especially with WHO in place now, that we want to get to. It's just whispered to me that we are doing very well. So it's an interplay of several factors. But first of all of us who are expert committee reviewers are also investigators, which makes it very fair. So, you know, what you feel, the delay you feel is the same delay that I would feel elsewhere. So we would want to expedite that. Maybe my colleague can just mention something, but it's usually there are several issues. Yeah. It's not common. Each application has its own issues. Some of them, of course, like it's been said, you know, most of the studies are done in Africa. So you see, you have to be very, very sure that what is going, especially on new agents, you want to be very sure that they are safe to the patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Kigen. So I think, Dr. Okaka, we have finally come to you, and maybe you can tell us the role of industry. What is the industry's perspective? In the recent past, we've seen a lot of industry pharma companies sending out calls, asking for investigators to put in applications for funding for investigator-initiated studies. Maybe you can tell us how that is working out. What are how is that landscape looking like?
Okay, thank you. Let me know you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So first, I'd like to acknowledge my seniors, my lecturers, Prof. Kigen, Dr. Busahala. They both taught me pharmacology, and I guess that's why I'm on this side now in pharma. Yeah, so they did a good job. Now, what we see from our side, I think, gap I'd like to highlight is the mismatch between what I would say are the investigator requests and what the pharma considers important. And I think it's a gap that is there 2 ways, because we do not speak to each other. And I think from the discussions that have happened so far, I keep getting a feeling that people imagine industry is a different stakeholder and investigators are different. No, we are both in healthcare. And just because we have a profit incentive, it doesn't mean we don't want the healthcare system to work. And so the question becomes, how do we get investigator requests to align with what industry thinks are important, and how do we get industry to also understand what investigators see as important? Within industry, at the beginning of every year, and I'm sure this is across the companies, we sit, probably every company sits and looks at what are the evidence gaps, what are the unmet needs that patients have,
and where then do we invest for the next 12 months, 60 months, as much as 15 years. And then we make decisions on these are the priority areas, and this is where then we think we can fund. It would be encouraging to hear that then institutions that are involved in research do the same and share this data either with NACOSTI or with large organizations or even with industry, so that then we start getting alignment. Because the more we understand, then the more we are willing to fund. And funding does not, so the second thing I would think of is funding is not always money, because a lot of the requests that have been coming to us, well, 99.9% are, give us money, we want to do this. I would challenge investigators and say, how then do we partner beyond the physical money? Are there opportunities where we can support in kind? And probably that's not something that people have taken a lot. And in kind could be drugs, could be reagents, could be other aspects of the patient journey that then are important to this study. Could be even registries, could be software, but we rarely, if ever, get requests for support that then look beyond either money or if people are willing to, maybe the drug. So maybe that's the second thing. And lastly, what Dr. Kerama has brought up is understand your regulatory landscape. It's very important for you to understand what is allowed, what is registered, what is on label, what is off label within your healthcare ecosystem. From what, the example he used during COVID, and we've seen other examples hence, and probably it's partly because of the investigator training, then we don't get exposed much to understand how pharmaceutical or device regulators work and what the restrictions are around usages of drugs on and off label, pre-registration, post-registration, what actually is supposed to happen. So to me, those will be the three challenges, and I would open the floor back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Okaka. As I promised, we were going to pick on you, so I'm going to ask the panelists if anybody has something to chime in to what Dr. Okaka has said from the industry perspective. Go ahead. Thank you both, Dr. Basada.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Okaka. I'm trying to remember somebody who did a supplementary who had a similar name. But what I would like to ask you is, but I don't think it was you. I think what I'd like to ask you is how closely, or do you have any opportunity to look at the proposals we usually send to the National Research Fund for funding? Most of them are never funded, and they have excellent investigator-initiated ideas. Actually, the National Research Fund is an archive of excellent investigator-initiated trials. So I don't know if you ever look at that. And then the other issue that you've brought up is how we can closely work together in terms of this. And I'm really thinking, do you have channels, that are open where if we have existing problems, evidence gaps, we can bring to your attention in a continuous process? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doc. For sure, it was not me, the supplementary. They used to tell us, you either get 90 or a supplementary. I was on the other side. So with regards to NRF, unfortunately, on our end, we do not have any visibility of what gets sent to NRF. And it's purely by design because as far as the regulator is concerned, we are purely an external profit-making company. And so unless there are structures in place, we would not be able to know what is available there and what gaps exist. I mean, at least from that local standpoint. But in terms of the channels, every multinational so far and a few of the local companies have what they call a medical science liaison, MSL, who is known to you. That is your primary contact person. The work of a person who is called a medical science liaison, and the reason they are separated within pharma from, say, your sales reps or your commercial teams is because then they look at the scientific aspects of your engagement with the pharmaceuticals. And this is one of them. What are the evidence gaps you have, and how can they solve for these problems? And one of the solutions is actually investigator-initiated studies, or they can work with you to develop different solutions. So I think that's an underused pathway. People would look at pharma as people only reach out to us when they have conferences, and I think we need to expand this discussion beyond those discussions.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more input from Prof. Keegan.
Yeah, without repeating what my colleague has said, I always wonder if I went back to Liverpool, we get a lot of funding from pharma until we were chasing them away. You know, they're always competing. There's a big I know you might not be able to answer that question. There's a big mismatch here between industry and academia. Can channels be created, even in a small way? Maybe we have, like, say, pharma work, say, with oncology, so that instead of the investigators working with the pharma from the other end, where the manufacturing and the research is done there, can there be a middle way where pharma can talk with academia?
I would probably not be able to answer. I hope I'd be able to answer that. What I've seen happen in, rightly, as you said, in the UK is then a lot of these discussions are held with the NHS and with a specific trust, because every trust then develops, research needs and research teams that then are constantly following up on pharma. So what you see on your end, investigator, is the eventual outcome that, yes, pharma is chasing you because these discussions already happened behind the scenes. Now, here we have a scenario where we don't have such structures in Kenya, and we've never worked to set them up yet. And so maybe then this could be the pitch to us as CRSK, everyone in the room. How do we create this? It's much easier to work with a consortia versus an individual researcher. How then do we develop this consortia to then forefront research needs, and be able to do this? Other countries could have even gone the quote unquote legal way, where then there is a requirement within the country that if you are invested in this country, you have to put a certain percentage of either your revenue or your proceeds, pump it back into research within that country. But that's not something I would raise at pharma, but that's something that then you as an investigator can lobby then the government. How do we make sure that the companies that are investing here and reaping profits, quote unquote, how do they then plow back some of what they get into research within the country? And I think that would probably change the tables.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Okaka. I think that's a very important point you've raised there on collaboration. And I think as investigators as well, this is our call to action, that we can't all just sit and be developing our protocols in our small offices. It's okay to reach out to your fellow investigator. Let us see how we can work together. And I think CRSK are doing a very nice job trying to bring us all together and with one voice. And if we all come together, I think we can achieve some of those things. We can lobby pharma. We can, talk to our regulators a bit more, and we can work as a team. And I think Dr. Kerama will agree with me. I know sometimes it doesn't seem like we are working together, but we are working together, and we all want the same things. And now I'm coming back to you to just highlight some of the ways KPPB is trying to improve the landscape for investigator-initiated trials, and how we can hop on that bus and how we can help as investigators.
Thank you. And a number of considerations or a number of initiatives are in place to address some of the challenges that we have seen with investigator-initiated trials and indeed across the clinical trials spectrum. The key thing that any investigator in the room will agree is that timelines have been a challenge. And this is not only in Kenya, but it cuts across a number of countries where clinical trials are happening. And to be specific in our setup, one of the reasons why we have protracted timelines is because we have serial submissions to ethics, and then you go to the regulatory, then after the regulatory, you go to NACOSTI. And unfortunately, in some incidences, you get down and you have to encounter your county again for another level of review and approval. So to address that, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, together with NACOSTI and a number of select ethics committees, I believe Moi University is involved. We have received funding, or funding is on our way to pilot a parallel submission framework. This has been in the works for a long time, and I thank my expert committee members that are here. They worked on the document, but it has taken time to have it actualized. That is finally in the pipeline. It will start at a pilot level to see how it works with a select number of ethics committees together with NACOSTI. So the intention is to have the study submitted in parallel. The reviews will be done simultaneously, and the investigator will receive any queries or comments at the same time. And therefore, you are able to address them immediately, and that cuts down on average at least 3 months. So that is coming up, and we will be communicating on the modalities. But as I highlighted, PPB, NACOSTI, and a number of ethics committees are already working on that. The other perspective is with regards to areas where collaboration can be put in place. As Prof. Were highlighted, one of the challenges that we have noticed with our studies, especially those initiated by investigators, is sufficiently powering the study to have data that will be credible to advise policy, because the number that we have reviewed over time, they just have the right number to power the study. Any dropout, any lost to follow-up affects the study, and therefore you are not able to proceed. So what we are working on is to provide a platform for information sharing, and this is going to be available for researchers to use so that you are able to know which study is happening where. So what we have done is to make clinical trials or researches that have been approved, they are now public on the Pharmacy and Poisons Board website. You are able to see which study is already approved, and if it touches on your subject of interest, you are able to know who the investigators are, and you are able to reach across to them, so that if there is any collaboration to be done, that is available at your desk. So our call to the investigators and partly a call to the industry, and I'm glad Dr. Okaka is online, is when we have an investigator-initiated trial that would require basic product information, if the industry can provide. I know we have a lot of concerns about data protection and confidentiality, but what we can confirm to the industry is that Pharmacy and Poisons Board has a secure link where you can support the investigator by providing the information, especially on quality of the product that may be required, so that we make it easier or possible for the investigators to access that data and offer any clarification to regulatory queries that may have been raised. I know it is a discussion that may take place and may take longer outside this forum, but those are some of the opportunities that we have put out there. And we believe that in the course of time, that is going to make it easier for researchers to do their trials. And finally, just like Prof. Were said, a lean team, overworked, overburdened, and under-resourced. That is Pharmacy and Poisons Board clinical trials for you. And the consideration has always been increase the number of reviewers, but that always attracts, there's a financial cost to it. So what we have in consideration is that much as we have discussions around a review of regulatory fees, it is not going to affect in locally initiated, investigator-initiated trials. Of course, this is a long-term discussion, so that we have it tied in a way that the industry that is well-resourced could pay a figure that is different from what the investigator will pay, unlike what is the situation currently where the fees is uniform across board. We also have discussions, and Prof. Keegan had highlighted in our offline discussion, that there is need to build capacity for researchers as well as the research teams. And it's good to note that we have a number of brilliant researchers in the country, and I can confidently say without fear of contradiction that across the East African region, Kenya stands at the top in terms of the quality of researchers that we have, the infrastructure in place, and even the legal framework that we have for regulation of clinical trials. And therefore, what we want to do is to make it possible for the researchers to utilize the specialization and the quality of researchers that we have across each other, so that we make it possible. And this is mostly with regards to when we're talking about data and data management. There is absolutely no problem in my consideration if Moi University CRC has a perfect data management system that can be used by another researcher, consider, of course, with proper data protection and confidentiality. That would form a perfect collaboration between the two, so that you do not have everybody or every investigator investing heavily on the same thing that is available in the neighborhood that they can liaise and maximize the use. I think those are some of the things that we have in place. We also are open to further discussions on how to further improve and make sure the clinical trial infrastructure is suitable for the researchers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kerama. And before I open it up for other suggestions from the other panelists, I want to pick on you on one item you mentioned, that a lot of investigator-initiated trials come with maybe wanting to test, repurpose a new drug. And is there any way KPPB can relax some of the requirements, like what we've seen with the FDA, so that if the repurposing is not necessarily meant to remarket, that the rules can be, loosened a bit, just to encourage these investigators as they write these protocols?
Thank you. A very good observation and a very good question. And I'll shortly be borrowing the wisdom of my experts. But as they think around it, I want to highlight that Pharmacy and Poisons Board, and indeed all the national regulatory authorities, do not operate in solitude. We work under the global benchmarking tool, and this is a benchmark for all regulatory authorities with regards to oversight of clinical trials and other regulatory functions that surround the regulation of health products and technologies. In that framework, a sponsor is defined as the person that is responsible for the study. And therefore, when we have an investigator-initiated trial, the investigator assumes the role of the sponsor, and therefore everything else applies. So I would not say that we can relax the rules. I will not say that we can bend the rules. What I can say is that we will be available to support, and in areas, especially areas that are specific for context, we have locally applicable contexts. Those we can have discussions and see what is feasible, what is not. But what is global benchmark, that we will have to maintain it.
We appreciate that response. And I'm just going to open it up to the panelists in case you have something else to chime in. I know Susan is starting to look at me with her watch, like we're almost out of time. Yes, Prof.
Yeah, I would like to speak to the PTB, Dr. Karama. Hello? Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges that has been mentioned here for investigator-initiated trials is the issue of funding. And I do know that there is what appears to be good political will in terms of boosting, research funding within the country. In terms of, currently, Kenya is said to be allocating about 0.8% of the GDP for research overall, and aiming to go to 2%. And we know that the African Union has suggested that we should have at least 1% of the GDP allocated for research for any development. Just for comparison, outlier countries like Israel spend over 5% of their GDP on research. So now, we know that recently there has been a creation of the department, the State Department for Research, Technology and Innovation, and that signals good political will towards, buttressing research. But one thing that I'm not sure about is how are we going to channel the resources that may be made available through sort of like national research agenda of various thematic areas. And sitting where you sit, is it that it is a top-down approach or a bottoms-up approach to research initiation? Because if you are going to be involved in an investigator-initiated research, there has to be some knowledge of what has any chance at all of being funded from the national coffers or wherever. And I would imagine that having a national research agenda with thematic areas, within thematic areas, might help direct researchers who might be interested in specific areas. But on the other hand, that could also be seen as stifling individual innovation. And so a bottoms-up approach that allows researchers to think of whatever innovative ideas and channel them up for funding. So what is your role as a national organization in informing how the existing national research fund is structured and is made available and disseminated to potential investigator-initiated research projects?
Thank you, Prof, for the good question. I'm not sure if I will be able to address it adequately. What I would want to say first is that where we sit as Pharmacy and Poisons Board as a regulatory authority, our major responsibility is to ensure that the environment or the clinical trial playground is even for all the players therein, and this is with regards to the researchers they are in their different formations. With regards to the National Research Fund and whether we have a role to play in it, at least not currently, we do not have a direct say in it, considering that the role of research under NACOSTI is currently domiciled at the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, if I'm not wrong, recently moved from the Ministry of Education. So what we can offer or what we can provide as Pharmacy and Poisons Board going forward is opportunity to provide information on what are some of the researches that have happened. And this is possible if we create a local registry, which I've highlighted that we have made it visible to other researchers. But with regards to pointing researchers in a specific direction, we currently do not have, we are not involved in the management of the National Research Fund, but it's something that we can look into and see whether there is an opportunity for Pharmacy and Poisons Board to be actively involved so that we are able to guide researchers and potential researchers in that direction. But I can also check with my experts if they have an input on it.
Yeah, I think that's, I can understand we have so many institutions in Kenya, but one of the biggest problems is they are not working together. So if there is a way that academia could work together, I sit in a board of, health force. So you see, sometimes the university is producing people, the ministry is employing, and there is no coordination. So if all the government entities can work together, all this would be sorted out very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more comments or additions? I think we can also move into Q&A. We have a very active online community. Thank you everybody who's given their comments. I'm just going to highlight a few directed to the panelists. So one question is, how soon are we looking at clinical trials for new drugs for the African population? Most of the drugs in clinical trials are usually run outside the African population. Sorry, you have been studying union.
I know Dr. Karama, that one also. I know there is a big push globally, all over the world, to bring clinical trials to science. And instead, the school that Africa is the second largest holding science. Because of the second largest holding population, that is started globally about 25%, and yet we participate in only 2.5% of the clinical trials in the world. And about half of those are in South Africa. The rest of Africa do the little bit that is there. So there's a big push to remove that barrier, to open more clinical research sites. And that is why some of the sites like ours, we are working very hard to hold the hands of young sites that are coming up and support them so that they are capable to do clinical trials. I know one of the things we mentioned is lack of infrastructure. You don't have to, the world now is a global village. You can send your samples to South Africa, they will be run and you will get the results in about 2 days. Or you can send them to any of the established labs if we work and we get you back your results. So that should not be a showstopper. Some people probably don't have a lot of experience in doing clinical trials. We are willing to mentor. The universities are there. We are also available if you want come for an attachment, to come and see what is going on. All these things we need to do so that we can open more clinical trial sites. One of the biggest problems that Dr. Kerama has mentioned, and we had one of the pharmaceutical companies that has been running away from Kenya. Now they are beginning to come back. And their biggest complaint is the regulatory review time takes very long in Kenya. That is one of the biggest criticisms. But I think we are making a lot of progress also there so that we can bring pharma to come. Everybody seems to run to South Africa. And I always say, you know, I have a dream. One day, we should be able to submit your protocol and get your approvals in 1 month. We need to streamline that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Prof.
Yeah, I would like to also contribute to that aspect of that question of when will clinical trials start working on sort of local products. And my thinking is that the way we have set up our research institution and ecosystem in Kenya is such that there's a lot of research, but very little development in terms of product development that comes out of whatever products that we may be researching on. And I think we need to move beyond just clinical trials to demonstrate efficacy of certain things, but also begin thinking about developing products de novo rather than waiting for farmers from elsewhere to come here and develop them. Because the challenge we have is if the farmers are located in the West, then they come in here with their specific interests. And essentially they're using our populations to prove their, that their products work. And yes, we have the largest burden of disease and the largest population and so on. But at what point do we transition from just being a testing ground to a development ground where we develop products and then test within? And I think the key missing gap is in investment in research and development that is indigenous. For example, in Kenya, one of the things that is clear to any Kenyan, for example, is that Kenya does not lack resources. The issue is where the resources are put. And if we put the resources where we ought to put them, then it's possible to finance research and development. And working on that thought, within Africa, we have a lot of indigenous, plants that have pharmaceutical, effects that sit there. Nobody talks about them. Nobody is extracting to go and see what is it, what the, the effective products or the active products are, and how that can be translated into products that can be, clinically tested here. And it's a question of funding. It's not a question of lack of intellectual capacity. It's a question of funding, a question of required infrastructure, like you see in, development areas where people, within universities, within research centers, go beyond just researching, but transdisciplinary research that then produce products. We do very poorly there, and I think the problem is allocation of funds.
Thank you, Prof, for that call to action. I know a few people in this room who share your vision. Prof Kigen is here getting agitated because that is the gospel he's preaching. We have molecules in this country that can be tested and need to be tested. 2 more questions from the online audience, then we come to our audience here. These, unfortunately, most of them are for you, Dr. Kerama. Pole sana. So what are some of the common deficiencies observed in IIS submission that delays approvals? And is the checklist tailored for investigator-initiated studies?
Thank you to the person that asked the question. I think some of the things we've highlighted in the course of the discussion, but I can just recap them again. In the clinical trial submission package, we have quality documentation, we have safety documentation, and depending on the phase of the study, we also have efficacy documentation that is required. One of the commonest deficiencies we've noted, and I highlighted earlier in the discussion, is lack of quality documentation. Quality documentation majorly speaks to how was this product manufactured, how was it developed, what is the stability profile of this product, and therefore this is mostly proprietary information, and therefore the industry or the manufacturer may not readily share it unless you have a way of working with them. So that has been one of the major deficiencies, and unfortunately, that stops most of the reviews from progressing. And this is specifically for products that may not have received market authorization or approval for use in the country. But for those that have already received marketing authorization in the country, that is not a requirement, and therefore there's an opportunity to proceed with that study because Pharmacy and Poisons Board already has that information which was submitted during a market authorization. The other challenge that we face is with the requirement on the competency of the study teams. We have brilliant researchers, we have brilliant study teams. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges that is not justifiable is the workload, whereby most of our researchers are academicians. They have responsibilities in their academics. They also have responsibilities at hospital practice, and therefore they only have so much time left for them to justify their ability to properly oversight a clinical trial. And therefore, that workload justification becomes a challenge because when a study is not properly supervised by the principal investigator, that already brings in the question on the regulatory mind, how safe is the participant? And then finally, as I said earlier, is when a therapy is considered to be effective in the course of the trial, the post-trial access program comes into play. And unfortunately, the post-trial access needs to be defined way before the protocol is approved. So inability to justify or to put forth an acceptable post-trial access program many a time causes a challenge in approving investigator-initiated trials.
Thank you, Dr. Kiraman. Last one online for you. What is the status of collaboration in an African Medicines Agency framework to oversight clinical trials and help in review and improve timelines of multi-country trials?
Thank you. And a good question from the online viewer. I happen to have an opportunity to sit at a regulatory convergence and collaboration framework. This is under the African Vaccine Regulatory Forum. The intention of the African Vaccine Regulatory Forum, or AVRF if you may, is to ensure that there is collaboration between regulatory authorities and ethics committees within the African countries. And the intention is to have centralized review of protocols so that if you have a multi-country study that is supposed to happen in a number of countries within the continent, you only do a single submission at the AVRF level, which is now going to be under the African Medicines Agency. Once that has been received, the review will be done centrally for the quality or the global protocol perspectives. What remains are the country-specific aspects that are going to be handled at country level. A few studies have gone through the pathway, and I'm glad to report that those had a very quick initiation timeline. And if that is exploited fully, it's going to cut down on the time to site and study initiation, at least for the multi-country trials. And we hope to borrow that experience to pilot it locally, as I highlighted earlier, so that local investigators also have a feel of the benefit of a collaboration within the framework, and therefore in country that will speak to the possibility of having the submission done to a central review board or an ethics review, so that you do not have several ethical committees reviewing. But I think the ethics team will respond better on that. But as Pharmacy and Poisons Board, we are available, and we already sit in the collaborative meeting in country and also in Africa. And this is to ensure that time to study initiation is shortened so that therapies are available for use.
Thank you, Dr. Kirama. Dr. Okaka, your hand is up. Maybe you want to chime in.
Yeah, thank you. I was Am I gone?
Yes, you can.
Yes, I was reacting to a specific point, asking on the investigator and the sponsor that Dr. Kirama mentioned. So just for the sake of the online audience, there is usually advice that generally it's advisable to avoid having the investigator as the sponsor, even in an investigator-initiated study, especially if it's interventional, because then there's the issue of legal liability and responsibility and risk. So as much as possible, it's best advised to have a separate sponsor and another legal entity. Then you can have the investigator, just playing that sole role. Then with regard to clinical trials for new drugs, I think then the ask I would have is then we take our space as investigators and challenge the ecosystem. Other countries have done that. There are countries, probably Dr. Kirama knows this, Japan, that then require, new drugs have to have been tested in their population for registration to occur. I'm sure that might not be something we are able to do immediately as Kenya, but let's build towards, such places where we are actually part of those pivotal trials. With regards to R&D and de novo products, thank you, Prof. Were, on that. The question then becomes, how do we get our researchers in the places where people are actually talking about de novo products? I'll give you an example. This is in the public domain. 60% of the company I work for, the portfolio pipeline and current portfolio is from partnerships and purchases, and people, we've bought people who've done research, and then we buy the actual, molecule from them and develop it. I'm hoping to one day see an African even at that place, then able to pitch just the way the other people pitch to all the other companies in industry, and get into partnerships and long-term funding. So those would be my points. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okaka. I think now we can shift to our in-person attendees. They've been very patient and very happy, smiling at me. So I think we can take questions from the audience. Susan, do you have a mic to go around?
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Kilu. I have a question for the panel. How can we embed AI into the processes of developing the concepts and also the regulatory processes for investigator-led studies? Thank you.
I take more questions?
We can give a chance so that people don't forget the question. The role of AI. I think it was also a question in one of in the chat, where AI has been brought up as featuring in reviews? And again, how can we incorporate that into development of the investigator-initiated trials?
Maybe I can start, then the rest can join in. But yes, AI is an excellent idea. You know, you can use AI to get a protocol ready within 1 hour. You know, you don't need to take a whole year to develop a protocol. You can get it ready within 1 hour. And it might even be better than you going around looking manually for information. What you need is, be able to go through it and own it, because there is also a danger. The danger with AI is that then you can end up submitting something that you don't own, something that is owned by AI. But from what I have gone through in terms of AI, I would really advise investigators to be familiar with it and to use it. And I also think that reviewers should find a way of using AI, because it is going to make everybody's life much, much easier. So that's what would be my comments with regard to AI and investigator-initiated trials. Yeah, thank you. But others come.
Yeah, mine is a quick one. I use it a bit. Remember, we said when you have an idea, you need to search to find out whether your idea really where it fits in the universe of such ideas. So you post it, you ask questions, and you see what is available out there. And it actually points you, like gives you links and whatnot that you can click on. So it's a very quick way of assessing the literature. Or if you have a very large document, PDF, and you really want to know what is the gist of what is it talking about, that's another way to quickly gather information and get direction where you need to go. Other places, of course, they are very sophisticated, even in, now leave it for Kerama, designing drugs and whatnot. The only thing is when you use AI, you have to declare it in one of your acknowledgement to say I used AI. so because that is considered ethical, because there will be some languages there people will frown. But if you declare ahead of time, then you are credible. Yeah.
It's Professor.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to chip into the AI discussion. Like Dr. Busahara has mentioned, the earlier large language models, but I think it's working. Yeah. The earlier ones used to hallucinate a lot. So the AI would give you an output that has things that it created. So the first important thing to think about is you must go through the work, own it, and check. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of gibberish in there that sounds very, intellectual. So people use it, yes, for many reasons, including developing proposals, and you have to declare from an ethics point of view. In fact, more recently, you find even funding organizations saying that they allow the use of AI, but you have to declare how you used it and what you used it for. And I think that is the critical element. The other thing to remember about the use of AI is that depending on what kind of information it has been trained on, it can have biases that can be actually an ethical problem. Yeah, so that has to be something that you also think about. In terms of how we've used it, in the review, the ethics review process, even within the African region and emanating from, I believe, Nakosti, there's been a collaboration with a South African group called EthicsPath that developed a platform for review. In fact, it's the one that we use for submitting our proposals for review. But now they have experimented with the use of AI as the initial sort of triage review. So it actually can help to hasten the process of review by, going through, as Dr. Busala said, what would take me 2 or 3 days or 4 days to review, the AI will review in less than 2 minutes or so. You'll get a sense of where the issues are, and then now you can use it, go through the manual way to ensure that what you are reviewing makes sense. So yes, there is a lot of role for the use of AI, but the critical issues to remember are: you must review the work, you must declare that you used it, and you must be aware of the biases that may come from what you used.
Thank you so much, Prof. Yes, Dr. Kirama.
Thank you, Dr. for the brilliant question on the use of AI and the responses that have come from the fellow panelists. From Pharmacy and Poisons Board, where we sit, we have already incorporated a mandatory declaration, whether you have what you have is original information or it's AI generated. That is part of the declarations that you make. What I also want to bring forth is that AI is a very important tool. It's here to stay and it can only get better. So we really need to embrace it. But the challenge is, where do you draw the line, especially for generative AI? Generative AI is when you go to, the most common I think for us is ChatGPT, which happens to be not very sophisticated. You type in your command, go for a shower, come back, it has everything. Yes, and that is generative, but does it always generate the right thing? No. The whole concept of AI and machine learning is about being, you have been, or the machine has been tailored or has been prompted at certain times to a way that it has aligned its thinking from where it generates what you prompt it to provide. So Pharmacy and Poisons Board, we are very keen on filtering out generative AI, and we have tools for it. And when we are screening an application, we have already embraced AI in screening of applications. And there is a percentage, just like in academia, with which there is a cutoff. Beyond that percentage, plagiarism and invalidity of your protocol comes in. So we have to be very we have to be very keen and consider it important that when we are embracing AI, especially the generative AI, we need to ensure that we are not overkilling and going out of the expectation to a level that your proposal or your research is going to be invalidated. And finally, on the same discussion is in the review side, where ethics and regulatory sits, predictive AI is very useful for us, where you are able to scan the submission and it will already predict where areas of deficiencies are. It helps you tailor your efforts to that, but that does not take away the human intervention part. So we really need to draw a balance between predictive AI and generative AI, even as we embrace it in research.
Thank you so much for that nice summary. Striking the balance and remaining human while doing it. We have time for two more questions. Yes, Dr.
So thank you very much. My name is Kennedy. So I'm asking, looking at the quality issue, the use of concomitant medication in a study. So I know this normally determines some secondary outcome of these studies, and it is normally left to the discretion of the PI. So let me take a case of sickle cell disease, where most of the outcome may be monitoring of the pain, and analgesics is now left for the PI to choose. So in your capacity, are you in a position to regulate which analgesic we use? Because even in our matatus nowadays, you'll get people hawking analgesics. So in terms of quality issue, how do you come in this? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Kennedy. And this touches around what we consider market surveillance and also what options are available to the public. I will just delve a little deeper into what we call schedules of medical products. In the infrastructure and in our legal framework in the country, we have, as commonly we know them, we will have either over-the-counter products or prescription-only products. Unfortunately, when you schedule a product either as a prescription-only or as a over-the-counter product, you have to draw a balance between two. Balance between oversupply or availability of a product that to a population that it's not supposed to be available to, and also restricting access to that product. And therefore, the painkillers, the most common ones, the paracetamol and the like, would be over the counter, and therefore they are readily available because rescheduling those makes it impossible or restricts access. When it comes into a study, and as Kenneth has asked, the investigator is supposed to take a decision, but the participant has access to these products elsewhere. What I can say is that it's therefore the responsibility of the investigator and their team to ensure that the participants are well educated on the need for them not to self-medicate, because we all are aware that over-the-counter products may be available at the nearest shop, and therefore that remains the responsibility of the investigation team to educate the participants, and also for us to empower the participants by ensuring that they know what they are participating in and the risk of other therapies that may have been supplied from elsewhere. So it is largely a matter of educating the public, the participants, and also proactively helping them to ensure that they do not access therapies outside the trials that they are participating.
We have one more question. Yes, Dr. Beatrice.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Beatrice Meli. I am the principal investigator for the AMPATH Multiple Myeloma Program. And this conversation couldn't have been more timely. Thank you so much, MUCRC. Because in the AMPATH Myeloma Program, we have actually written, I think, 4 investigator-initiated clinical trials. And looking at what the panelists are saying today, now I understand why maybe we have not succeeded in any of them. Yes, so, but thank you for this conversation. In fact, like, we just started writing them, and to be honest, I had no idea that anything like that existed, but because of our collaborations with colleagues from Indiana University, that's how we were able to do this. So my question is on mentorship, and this is specifically for Dr. Busahana, and we thank you so much for having been the pioneer director for the Hemato-Oncology Directorate for almost 10 years. And my and the panelists have mentioned the slim clinical researchers that we have. And Dr. Sawe has said, maybe if you have interest, you can visit Kericho and learn 1 or 2, but I'm hoping for a more structured way of doing this. If I give an example, in the myeloma program, it's been there for a long time, and I've only led it for the last 3 years. But before that, I shadowed for 3 years as a clinician. When I sit in the clinic, I used to wonder, how do people come up with questions? Like, how do you come up with a problem and for you to solve it? And it was through that shadowing that now when I sit in the clinic, by the time I'm done with the clinic, I have 5 problems which I want to solve. So how do we mentor both? And this is all the way to undergraduate, postgraduate, and also we have a big pool of clinical, established clinicians who we are not doing research, we are overwhelmed with clinical work. Probably that has been our strength. How do you nudge them? Because then there's this big gap. How do we nudge them in so that even as we strengthen the young ones to come in, the other ones already on board can start, strengthening this pool?
Thank you, Beatrice, for that question. And the answer is involve everybody. It's a random thing. Sometimes you land on somebody who then gets interested. You are one of the few people when we started, and everybody told me, yeah, this is what leadership should be. You may not have known, but people told me this is what a leader should be doing. And you picked it up. There are many others I've tried and they have not. Now there's another one again, who has picked it up from a very different department. And when, we started working with her, it was like, you are giving me a lot of responsibility and I have to go and see patients elsewhere. And I was telling her, just keep trying. And today she's a PI, and I'm a co-PI on her program. Okay, so I answer to her, but I'm the one who, mentored. And it's to me, it's a continuous process. You will try so many, maybe 9 will say no, 1 will accept, and you keep moving on. You behave like government, isn't it? You keep training, you keep training, and those who pick up, moving. Those who don't, it's fine also because it's a democratic world. Yeah, but you focus on what you are doing. The idea behind research overall and investigator-initiated trials in particular is vision and resilience. Those two must be there. Yeah, I remember Prof. Sika here being defunded one day, and he could have given up. Many of you don't know that, but I remember that very well. But he soldiered on, and here we are today. So I think having a vision and being resilient is really the way to go if you want to succeed in research. Yeah, thank you.
And I think I want to chime in there because I am a product of mentorship. And I think one of the key lessons as an investigator you come to learn is mentorship and how the research world is structured. There's a lot of respect for seasoned researchers. So sometimes it might be your idea, but no one will fund it, right? So you collaborate and you seek out that experienced researcher in the field you want and you sub them. You just go under there and you're humble and you learn and you survive 1 or 2 and eventually someone knows your name. And then now you're investigator. And as Dr. Busahala has said, then you start subbing other people. But it takes a lot of humility to accept that you can be an excellent top tier clinician, but you're not an excellent top tier investigator. And you allow someone else to mentor you, to teach you. As you're doing the menial, a lot of work, by the way, you'll do the work, but eventually you get there. And I see Rosemary next to you is nodding her head. Rosemary sits in those places where they make decisions on if they're going to grant a PI based on their experience. And I know a lot of us have not been funded because we are PI with no experience. Yet we can seek out someone who has experience and get funded. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but we are out of time. This has been excellent, amazing. We have a lot of great feedback here and also online. We have a very active online audience. I think we have 300 plus people listening to us online. And as you can see, our room here is full. I think we even ran out of space at the back. So thank you. Thank you for indulging us. Thank you for all your ideas and opinions. And now I think I'll call our POR, that is our pharmacist on record, to come and give a vote of thanks.
Testing. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I'd like to thank our virtual audience. Over 300 of us have joined tonight. Can you believe that? It's wonderful. I think our physical audience has also been great. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. For our invited guests, Asante Sana. Our panelists have traveled from far hata kama ni Eldoret kwa nyumba yao. They've come. And we thank you so much for being here. The conversations have been eye-opening and really just wonderful. We also want to thank CRSK for putting this together. The Secretariat, Gilberto Getty, Chris, Auxilia, Rose, Maureen, Judy, Vanessa, Modoni, Charles, Eddie, thank you so much. And our fundi wa mitambo who are over here taking pictures of us. We also want to thank Moi University, MPRH and AMPATH for giving us this platform. I know Prof. Nyandiko was online today. So thank you all so much for coming. Asanteni sana.
Finally, we can have tea. Tea served outside. Enjoy. And if you have any more questions or any input, or if a pastor would say, if you feel touched and you if you feel touched and you want to explore more, we are on second floor, Chandaria. The entire left wing is MUCRC. We are available to mentor, to have discussions, and each of these panelists is also available to us in case you have a question you want to follow up with any of them. We can link you up. If you identified a mentor, we can link you up. We are here to work together, and we are here together to grow research in this country. Thank you very much.